Yeah, I'm Peter Baker. I'm a consultant clinical psychologist. I work for the National Health Service. I'm currently sort of employed by Sussex Partnership NHS Foundation Trust as a clinical psychologist, and I'm also an honorary senior lecturer at the Tizard Centre at the University of Kent. So, yeah, good implementation of PBS in services. Well, our conceptualisation of what sort of underpins sort of challenging behaviour is usually you've got challenging behaviour services. Now, these are services that to the outside world look as if they've been deliberately set up to wind the individual up. They look as if they've taken into consideration any need or sort of preference of the individual and deliberately set out to not meet that need, sort of wind the individual up. So in good services, what you wouldn't see that you wouldn't see that clunky fit between the individual and where they live. It would be smooth. So what you would see is ordinariness. What you would see is flow. What you would see is sort of normality. You wouldn't see sort of crisis. You wouldn't see sort of people sort of responding in sort of shocked and sort of chaotic ways. It would be that's how it would look. It would be sort of imperceptible, and it would be sort of a bit like the duck on the lake or the swan on the lake, who's sort of gliding across sort of effortlessly. And of course, that what we know happens underneath the surface is there's sort of lots of paddling, and I think the sort of PBS services are a bit like that, because you've got lots and lots that's happening sort of underneath. But if you go in, you shouldn't be aware of that. What you should see is smooth. What you should see is flow. I mean, one of the things I've learned sort of over the years, and I guess the longer I do this, the longer you have to reflect, is that I think one of the things that I sometimes bring to the table is a sort of like a sort of sponge that sucks up all the sort of negative sort of emotions. And I've been made aware of this. We never sort of question sort of what I do or how I do that. But I think that's in essence is part of the approach, and it's one of establishing sort of empathy, establishing sort of a sense to which we have really fought hard to try to get inside the shoes of the individual, to sort of understand sort of what it is they like and they don't like. And these are often individuals that can't tell you. If I could, I would sit down and we'd have a chat about it, and then I'd sort of make notes, and then we'd make life like that. But for various reasons, the individuals that I spent most of my professional life working with, they can't do that. And what they do is they tell us sort of by their behaviours, and it's up to us to to really sort of go out of our way to understand sort of what it is that they're trying to tell us. And so that's what I would expect in the leaders within those services, and I guess within all the staff in the services, they would have that sense to which they were absorbing sort of the negativity, and such that it wasn't apparent. So and I was out at a service last week, and that's the thing that really struck me. There's a young man that's just moved there, a young man that's been in an assessment and treatment unit, and I've been following him offering support for the last year or so, and it's been a pretty tortuous journey for him, and he's arrived now at a placement that we hope is going to be, his home for the next few years, and he's found that transition difficult because that's what he does. He finds change difficult. Not surprisingly, he doesn't trust people because people have let him down. And there have been some sort of acting out in that service. It's accounted for 0.5% of the time, because there's also been some amazing things that have happened as well. But the acting out has been fairly impactful. There was an incident where this young man sort of became really upset, and he did a considerable amount of damage, not to himself and not to staff, because in fact the incident was handled really well, but the damage was done to the property, and I'd heard report that this had occurred, and when I went there, I sort of was fearing the worst. But what I got was a sense that that was okay. Obviously we didn't wish this to happen, but we're able to move on, and a real sort of celebration that people weren't hurt, that he wasn't hurt, and I think that's what you see. You see strong relationships. You see sort of staff that after a while not only understand the individual sort of in theory as you would sort of reading functional assessment sort of write up, but they actually understand the individual as a person. And then what you would also see is a huge positive regard towards that person. So those are the sorts of things. I guess, traditionally within, certainly, where PBS is coming from, we don't talk about these things as much as we should do. And maybe that's one of the areas that we've got to get better at. And certainly, I've become aware of that we don't talk about the importance of relationships. I know sort of previously, when we look at sort of models of support, we've tended to focus on engagement in meaningful activity. This is what it's all about. How busy is the person? And myself and my colleagues at the University of Kent at the Tizard Centre, I think we've been responsible for the sort of outbreak in hoovering for the people with intellectual disabilities in the southeast of England. And I suspect they're probably not queuing up to thank us for that. And you're hearing it for the first time. Life is more than hoovering, and I think we've actually sort of not paid enough attention to relationships. So that's what I would expect in a PBS service. Sort of strong relationships. You would see an effortless flow. You would see people engaged, sort of in sort of normal, sort of ordinary, sort of activities. I guess you might even see a bit of happiness as well. Who knows? That would be nice. It wouldn't sort of be clinical. That's the last thing. But don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that as I said earlier on, you've got that paddling that's happening below the surface. There's an awful lot of sort of effort that goes into sort of making the sort of extraordinary seem ordinary, and also be in terms of that sort of building sort of those relationships. because often the people that I've spent my lifetime sort of working with will do stuff that really sort of on the surface will make you want to sort of step back, rather than step toward. So it's not. Don't get me wrong, it's not easy, and I think we've learnt that to our cost.